Hi, and welcome to the 100th episode of Concussion Talk Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Nick Mercer. And before we get started on today's episode, I'd like to first thank my sponsor, HeadCheck Health. Concussion Talk Podcast is presented by HeadCheck Health. HeadCheck Health bridges the gaps in concussion care through simple, powerful technology. Join organizations like the Canadian Football League, Track Factory Racing, the Canadian Junior Hockey League, Eastern Washington University, and Volleyball Canada, who rely on HeadCheck Health to improve communication and optimize care. Visit headcheckhealth.com for more. Thank you all again so much for joining me on this 100th episode. If you'd like to support Concussion Talk or Concussion Talk Podcast, please visit patreon.com/concussion talk. You can follow me, rate, review on any way you get a podcast, really. Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and more, and wherever you get them. Or you can visit my website at www.concussiontalk.com. And now we're back talking to John, Don, and Alain about the bike ride on August 1st of 2003, which resulted in my brain injury, and this podcast, and my website, for that matter. So please enjoy. Thank you so much. I forgot to mention before when I beautiful introduction that Lauren Ziaks is also here. She's not help me really, basically host this episode. And I'm here with John O'Shaughnessy and Alan Schmitz, and Don is nowhere to be seen. We can't find Don, but she's there somewhere. But not on the call yet, but maybe she'll be. But Alan was just actually, I started this now because Alan was just telling us about the hearing projection well that day, and I guess Alan will start off with that, and then Lauren ask one question about how we got there, because they say I guess I could start off with just saying that I started at UVic, Victoria General Hospital. Victoria is in city in the capital of British Columbia, and and I started out there in UVic, University of Victoria, in January of 2003, and then I started doing triathlon, and that's where I met John and Don, who is not here, and Alan is John's friend from Banff. They just discussed from before that, so he's going right to this. Started sitting in June. Was it May? When
I don't remember.
Or something like that.
The month.
Yeah, something like that. That was the summer of 2003, and we would ride every Friday. Well, whenever we started riding, so every Fridays, and we'd go for how long? 60K, roughly, 2 hours.
Yeah, they're like 50K.
Few hours anyway.
Yeah, exactly, and different routes all the time. Similar routes, but like some of the same, right? We did. We
were on that Mun Road, and that was a favorite. It was a good hilly fun road, and that Ross Durant's Road was lots of fun to ride because it was pretty narrow and beautiful through the trees and the forest there, right? And rarely any traffic on it, so it was a great place for cycling.
And Alan, were you with us? We also did the observatory, or that was just that was over training, more short of a triathlon training ride. This was a kind of extracurricular ride with Alan, but we
did a lot too. That was a favorite. Or Kangaroo Road, East Sioux Park was one I think we did a lot too. Or Land.
I remember also about this day it was in summer 2003. There were lots of forest fires in British Columbia and in Vancouver Island, and remember we usually had a triathlon swim practice on Friday mornings, and this practice was canceled because of the forest fires. And I remember that, and then I remember Kevin Stenner calling me and saying, no practice, as I kind of thought kind of figured it would be the night before. We figured that to be practice, but just better get up early and just make sure. But he called to say that practice was canceled because of the fire, and then either I called John or John called me or got in touch now just before texting we took off. And we could do that 1, 2, 3, the number like the 2 like 3 times to get B to get C and like twice to get B and stuff like that. I think it was then. Anyway, that's not beside the point. We just decided to get on a ride. So I assume I met you at the Starbucks. Was it Starbucks on Severn or near your home? We'd meet
I
Don.
I don't remember where we met that morning, but I remember I could have sworn you'd skipped breakfast or something like that. Like it was either you'd slept in or there was some kind of, because I remember going up Munn Road and you were starting to saying you were feeling kind of like low, like having a bit of a bonk, like sugar crash thing, and then started eating. But yeah, that's
foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we'd meet Don at the gas station there in Shelburne and something, isn't it? Don't we meet at the gas station usually? Or is that Tanya we meet at the gas station? Meet you and Don together?
Don't remember where we met.
We just drive by your place, your apartment building to get to meet you.
On Hillside there at the time,
yeah. And I guess where we went, Don and Tanya, or maybe one of them, but at it was Hillside and Shelburne or Sherwin, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm not sure they intersect now because I forget the whole layout for her not totally, but just enough. But that's as far as I remember. So I guess Alain started telling them the exact story, which was in depth and pretty good. So if you can repeat where let's pick up where you left off, and also just start back to where I didn't record and you were talking about the accident. So
sure. Yeah, well, that morning we did Munns Road going up and then coming back down Ross Durant's Lake Road to Willis Point Road. And we're just about down to Willis Point Road, and there was a hairpin turn, a big right hand 90-degree turn, and I didn't quite see you when the accident fully happened. I saw you going over your bars.
Because you were saying that you and I were behind John and Don at that time?
Yeah, John and Don were ahead of us. And then there was another cyclist coming up the hill and around the corner. And what I kind of think happened is he cut it too close. And you guys hit the corner at the same time. So you swerved to miss the other cyclist, or basically you just went straight instead.
Yeah.
And when you hit the ditch, you did a Superman over your bars. And there was a big ass, like 4 foot wide tree that you went head first into. And that was when I saw you, was when you went over the bars and into the tree. When I got to you, you were convulsing, foaming at the mouth, completely unconscious in any other fashion. You're tangled up in some bush, so I got your helmet off so I could just hold you in C-spine. The other cyclist did have a cell phone, but there was no reception. And within a few minutes, Don and Tanya came back up the hill. And I believe either John or Don went to the house across the street and they called 911 from there.
That's pretty close to the hospital, isn't it?
Well, it took about 20 minutes for EMS to get there, the fire department, because I think the closest, it's pretty convoluted route to get there from where the fire department is, and they're also in the Highlands. It's they're an on-call system, so they have to get everybody to the fire department first. There's not just people sitting there. So it was a fair amount of time, and then we did a relay system because they wanted to just keep track of your vitals. So we relayed the vitals. I don't know. Do you remember, John? Were you having to run up to the house, or did we finally get cell service or anything?
No, I don't think we ever got cell service. We had the homeowner stay on the phone, and we were kind of just yelling back and forth.
Yeah.
That road is pretty steep downhill where the accident happened, and so we were all kind of flying. And I think, we'd ridden it so often that it was more fun than cautious. Let's just say that, right? So
Narrow.
we were going pretty quick, and I remember Dawn was right in front of me, and I was maybe 10 feet behind her when we went around that turn, and the other cyclist was coming up, and he was out in the middle of the road. I mean, it's basically a 1-lane road, right?
Okay.
And we had to swerve to avoid him. And then as soon as your accident happened, Nick, I remember him yelling, "Hey, your friend," right? Like he was hollering at us to get back up the hill.
Yeah.
And that was when Dawn and I turned around, and exactly as Alan described, he was down beside the tree in the bush with you, basically just trying to keep you in a headlock. And the other cyclist was saying, I can't get a signal here on the cell phone. So that's when Dawn and I went up to the other house and knocked on the door and said, there's been an accident. Can you call 911? And the homeowner came out to the end of the driveway. I think he had a wireless phone, right?
Like a satellite phone almost?
No, just like,
Cordless.
Cordless phone kind of thing. So he had a signal there. And and I think it's like, it's almost like a volunteer fire department up there. So as Alan was saying, that, they had to get to the fire station, drive their emergency vehicle up through the highlands, and it's slow going there in a car, right? You can't go very fast because that road is not a fast road.
You said it's like 1 lane, so it's
Yeah.
Well,
So
I
even
thought
though
it was,
it's not too far
I
from
thought
the
it was,
hospital,
I thought it was like really quick they got there, but yes, obviously not. So we think we were outside of Victoria more? I don't remember Victoria.
Yeah, we're up in the Highlands. Is the area that they call it. So it's past Langford.
Which is west of Victoria or more northwest?
It's out on the peninsula. It's out like,
okay.
I don't know. It's kind of hard. It's almost out towards Butchart Gardens and Brentwood Bay, and like where the dump is out there, the Heartland landfill.
Okay.
But you're east of that on the peninsula still.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't remember. And Lauren, do you have any? Lauren is still there. It's hard to see because Lauren's video is a bit sketchy, so we got to turn it off. So Lauren's still there. Lauren is. I heard her voice laughing. So, yeah. So do you have you into Victoria, BC? Have you?
No, I haven't been there. I had some questions for the fellows about what it was like to find you there, if that's okay.
Yeah,
for the listeners. So,
exactly.
Alan, you had mentioned that you had just finished your OF. What was it? Your wilderness training.
The OFA level 3 outdoor wilderness first aid.
Yeah, there we go. So lucky for Nick, he had somebody on his bike with him that had that training. And so what was that like for you? Sort of, was it in slow motion? What did it feel like to sort of see the accident happen and then kick into that training mode?
I don't think you think. You just kind of do, and I just always wonder if there had been more I could have done. I don't know. That's I guess just what you run through in your head, right? But like I said, Nick wasn't conscious, and it was just frustrating that it took a long time or to me it seemed like forever for the emergency services to get there. Just wanting Nick to get the help that he needed because he could.
Yeah, it's fascinating because when you think about where as the trained person, and then you have your social interactions where you're with the people that you care about and their friends, and so it's always a fascinating human condition when you're able to overdrive that personal connection you have with the person and be able to implement life-saving medical care without allowing that emotion to overdrive too much. So that's I don't think there's probably anything else you could have done. That's incredible that you were able to kick into rescue mode and help your friend. I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then for John, so what you were saying is effectively this person was perhaps not implementing the best road sense on the road as they were driving up. And so they saw Nick have his accident and then called back down. I'm imagining y'all are going pretty fast. So that must have all felt slow motion, but happened very quickly if he was able to call out to you and you could turn around and come back, huh?
Yeah, I think, at the time when I was swerving to avoid this guy, I knew that, this wasn't a normal situation. So we slowed down right away. It wasn't like ride on. I remember hollering at Don and just being like, whoa. And, the whole thing kind of happened really fast. I mean, Nick wouldn't have been that much farther back from where I was. And Al certainly wasn't that much further back from Nick. I mean, we were kind of riding together and just got a little stretched out on the downhill bit. But, when we would go on these kind of rides, we'd be, within a few feet of each other typically.
Yeah.
As road cyclists do, right? So.
Well, on the last time I had looked at my speedometer, we were doing around 55K before we hit that corner. I mean, you always slow down quite a bit going into that corner, but we're.
I guess I didn't. Oops, my bad.
It sounds like it was a case of really, really unfortunate timing, Nick, is what it sounds like.
Yeah,
because if it had been 5 seconds sooner or later, it sounds like it would have been a different day for everybody. Or if y'all had stayed tight together and all of you had hit at the same time, then what would have happened? I mean, it sounds like an unlucky but lucky situation, I guess.
I guess so. So do you remember, guys, how far into the ride we were when this happened? Because John, you said that I was saying instinct that I know I didn't eat or was hungry at least. Didn't have enough energy.
Getting out there, that had to have been a good hour and a half into a ride, maybe even 2 hours into the ride. That can't remember how long you typically take us to do that particular route, but that'd be like a 3 hour.
Half to 2 hours in between that.
Yeah.
It takes me about 2 hours nowadays.
You've gotten faster in your old age, eh?
I wish. Yeah. But yeah,
How long did
it was
it
close
take?
to the end, about 80% in.
How long did it take people to get back on their bikes again? Like, did it impact you all? Did it change your thoughts about riding? Were you just able to get back out and start training again the next day? What was that experience like?
I kind of put my bike down for a bit because we spent an awful lot of time in hospital for the next few weeks while Nick was, he was in a coma and in ICU for weeks, right, Nick? I think.
Yeah, I think 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah. So there was a fair group of us that were pretty much at the hospital.
Yeah, I remember mom and dad were very thought it was amazing how everyone was there at the hospital and all the time and just so again, I wish I remembered it, but I obviously kind of glad I don't remember it because that'd be a whole different thing. But yeah, so I mean, I don't remember that at all. That the hospital, I just know just that I was there and that I was in ICU and in the neurosurgical floor, whatever it was. But I don't really remember what the hospital looks like, or I know it looks like now because I went back a few years later, and just to do physio. But also, Don, when I came back after 2 years at home doing rehab and recovering, that when I had to finish my master's, you had kept my bike from my Trek 1000 bike from my base. It was not a great bike for what we were doing, but I didn't really buy a new one. That was easy, but yeah, you kept it and looked in pretty good condition.
You're a bit taller than me, so I couldn't ride it.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, it was like a 68 or something, like a 70, was it? It wouldn't be 70.
Maybe
That was like 58 or 60 centimeter frame, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it lived in my bike closet. I had a bunch of your stuff. But because we moved you out, or moved all your stuff out of the apartment there.
Yeah,
So you went back to Newfoundland.
Yeah, yeah. That's doesn't obviously it does. My parents and my sister found that intense, but it was great seeing you guys at the not great, but it's considering it's in circumstances, seeing you guys at the hospital at the time. So yeah, so I went there like DMS got there. How long did they take with me at the scene? Do you remember?
Sorry?
When the EMS got there, how long did they take with me before they actually went to the hospital? Or is there like what they do?
Well, I mean, they had to make sure that C-spine was kept, right? Because nobody knew if you had a spinal injury at the time either. So they got a spinal board out. And then, I mean, I think it was about 6 big firefighters lifted you up onto the board, strapped you in. I mean, at that point, I'm not keeping time, but it wasn't rapid. And then it was probably another 20 minutes at least back to Vic General.
Wow.
So I mean, from crash to hospital is probably an hour, right? Yeah. What do you think, John?
Right? I'd say at least an hour. It felt like it took forever for them to get on scene in the first place. I think we were all in a bit of a state of shock. I remember Alain kind of doing what he was doing to just try to hold you. I mean, you're essentially having seizures sporadically, and your limbs would start to kick and things like that. And I remember coming down the hill, going up and down that little hill there a few times, just trying to check on Al, make sure he was doing okay, relaying information back to the homeowner.
How far away was that home from where I was?
Not far at all, just across the road, right? But it was like a longer panhandle kind of driveway, so the house was probably set 100 feet back from the road.
Okay.
So then everybody went, once they packaged you up and sent you down to the hospital, everybody was able to come and visit right away. How long did it take for you guys to be able to have access to Nick to get information and know what was going on?
Well, they drove. I think there was somebody, one of the fire crew had a truck or something like that. We put all the bikes in the back of the truck, and Don and Alan and I got in the truck, and they drove us to the hospital. So we were kind of right behind Mick, maybe 10 minutes behind him. And when we went into emerge, like I remember coming into emerge and seeing the doctors working on him down the end of the hall kind of thing. And I think they put us in almost in like a psychiatry or psychologist office kind of situation. Like they didn't have us sitting out in the waiting room. And somebody came in to talk to us. And I mean, nothing was known. Right at that point in time, it was just they were working to try to stabilize Nick.
It was emerged. Obviously, it emerged. But I mean, how soon after emerge did I go to get to ICU from emerge? I don't know how that works. Lauren, I guess you can be told the protocol, but I mean, do you go straight from your emergency hospital to ICU, or how does that work?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you. That's a very big.
I was like, I'm not sure.
Directed question. Well,
I'm not sure because where I work, a trauma like that would be packaged and life flighted down to Salt Lake, and I don't work in that area, so I'm actually not sure how people transition from. In our hospital, you'll hear they'll say like trauma 2, 10 minutes, bay 2, or whatever it is, and then that team is activated throughout the hospital. And they have to be there by the time whatever is coming through the door. So essentially in the US, and I don't even know how it differs in Canada, but the ambulance would call into the hospital and they give them an update on what's coming, and they tell them how far out they are. And then the hospital makes a announcement. So that team is ready for whatever time that is. So you'll hear different times. You'll hear 5 minutes, you'll have 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then those people are deployed and waiting to catch that package when it comes through the door. And then because we're a regional hospital, you may or may not be shipped down to Salt Lake. They might keep it there depending on how many traumas there are.
Right. So John or Alan, do you remember how long before I went from seeing them in the room and emerge to ICU or to where I go.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I mean, at some point in time, you had to have surgery because they had to take a piece of the your skull,
Yeah,
and to relieve some of the pressure as your brain had swollen. And I
yeah.
don't know if you went into surgery and then went into ICU, or if you had surgery
Oh, that makes sense.
while you were already in ICU. I can't remember exactly how that went.
Okay. I thought my parents were saying that I was in a coma first, and they said, oh, then I had a hematoma. Then, but I'm not again now. I did look at my medical chart, so I know was written there, so I know the dates. And I can't remember though. Can't remember if it was when during the day or that day, or how long the surgery took, or so did. And you guys couldn't reach my parents. So they asked you, did John Allen? They asked you guys about like how to get my next of kin, I guess is what you're saying. So you guys know how to reach them?
How did we contact one of your friends? I think, John. I don't remember.
I can't remember. I almost feel like the hospital the hospital definitely got in touch with your dad, Nick.
Yeah.
Or your parents anyway. I think at that point in time, like I'd never met your family, and we were just kind of really starting to get to know one another through the triathlon stuff.
Yeah.
So I seem to recall saying, like, trying to help them get as much information about it, who you were, so that they could try to find next of kin. You know who might have been? You remember Suzanne? She got kind of involved.
UVic, maybe
Yeah.
I think the MBA school, then back public administration. I was doing a master's. I think maybe they contacted them.
That probably sounds like the most logical. They probably got in touch with the school to get your emergency contact info that you would have provided the administration. And
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't long before your parents got out to Victoria, right? I think they pretty much got on the first flight that they could, and it might have been 36 hours, and they were in town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, Lauren, I can't see Lauren as makes it difficult to really tell if she's got questions or not, or what. Lauren, there you go. You're try the video, not Lauren, and
I'll try to turn it back on, but
I think
don't think it's
we're
gonna work.
okay
We'll
now.
see.
I get this. I'm afraid to make a racket, but so Lauren, did you have any questions about that stuff?
No.
Now you're
And I
frozen.
want to know some more about what it was like. Oh, me.
No, you're good.
All right, I'll turn it back off again. Sorry. So I would love to hear more from there. So you, Nick, you're not that helpful right now because you're in a medically induced coma, right? So
I'm
you don't
not.
have anything to contribute really to the conversation. I'm just kidding.
I'm not very helpful at all. No.
But it would be interesting to hear from the fellow's perspective of what it was like, visiting, and what it was like being in the hospital while those decisions are being made and spending time with your family. I mean, however much they're comfortable, obviously, it was probably an emotional experience for them, but whatever they're comfortable saying about that experience, I think that would be interesting for listeners to hear while you're in this coma. What's the outsider's perspective of what that was like, and how did that emotionally, there's going to be a lot of people who've been caregivers that listen to your podcast. So they'll be able to understand some of that aspect and maybe feel a little bit like they're not as alone or things like that. So I think that could be interesting.
Great. So who wants to go first?
John?
Sure. I mean, it was a long time ago, so I'm jogging my memory here. I remember feeling maybe a little, because I was there, feeling a level of responsibility. Like I know the accident wasn't my fault. That wasn't how I was feeling at the time, but I like felt responsible to the situation. It was we had a tight-knit triathlon club going on, and there was a lot of people around that were coming to visit and spending time in the hospital. I think we couldn't actually get in to see Nick very often. I think I might have seen him 10 minutes a day kind of thing. We'd go in and out, and his parents obviously and his sister were first priority to spend time with him. So we'd be in the ICU waiting area outside in the hallway kind of thing. I just remember feeling like if I didn't have a reason to not be at the hospital, I was going to the hospital to make sure that things were okay there. And it was kind of a surreal time. It was a very surreal time.
Trying to lend as much help to the family and send out as much love to the universe for Nick. Just be there for him. It was, like John said, surreal, and I don't know, very emotional for sure.
And I think that Lauren may have, oh, there she is. She did drop off. Now she's back. Okay. No, she's confused though. So
you probably didn't hear much of that, Lauren. I was just saying that I felt a level of responsibility for the situation, and you do what you can to help Nick's family and just kind of positive energy prayers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I switched to the cellular data instead of the Wi-Fi.
Yeah. No, that's actually good to get pretty smooth now. I think it's better.
Alan, how about you? Sorry about my little absence there.
No,
you're saying positive energy. Same time.
Yeah, I mean, you feel kind of helpless, really, and you're just there to lend support to the family, try and just lend a helping hand or the helping heart to send as much positive energy to to the universe that Nick gets better. It affected me pretty deeply. Like I said earlier, every time I do that ride, I still think of that day, and I still think of Nick and think of how he's doing. And
nice. Yeah. I don't, that ride, I can't remember that. I remember the ride. I don't remember much. I know some of the rides you did, but I don't really know. I'm not from Victoria. I see, and I was out there for those 7 months, and then again after, but I couldn't really get out much then. But so I don't really know how much the rides really, the exact locations, like which routes we've taken, which routes we took, and where exactly they took us. So so it's hard to really know. And you were saying and you were saying we ended up on the hillside, right? Either on hillside. I remember that road, and I remember Mackenzie, Shelburne or Sherburne, one of those roads that this is all like in the city. And then when you get outside the city, the roads, I had no idea what they're.
Yeah.
I think it's great, Nick, that you had such a wonderful support group. I'm sure you on some level sense their presence visiting you in the hospital, and your family having so many of your friends around. I think that that's so wonderful for the people, on the outside who were involved. And then of course you, because there's so many people who believe that even if you're in a coma, you're somewhat present. And especially if you're in a twilight coma from medication, and how that energy and that positiveness feeds into you. There's a medicine to that medicine can never replicate. Right.
Yeah.
So having such support is so wonderful.
Yeah, no, I know my parents were so thankful for everyone there, from like John Allen and Dawn, we don't know where she is, but she's Dawn Tanya. No, Tanya was that day, and she said she wasn't there that day. But and Dawn was supposed to be on this call, but you lost her somehow. And and everyone on the triathlon team, and everyone at my master's program, and they're saying that they're all there too. And I'm not sure this how many people fit in the hospital waiting room, but wherever they were put. But they're just so thankful for everybody taking calls and answering questions and just being there, supporting, seeing me, even though I couldn't remember much. But I don't remember. I remember waking up. Don't remember waking up. I remember going to there's a room at the end of the hospital that was looked from trees and maybe the city in the background or something like that, or and no one ever leaving that day kind of when I left checked St. John's on September 11th of 03. I remember that very vaguely, but I remember going through a group of people there, or was there no there was no was there been boy we was there when I was wheeled out to hospital after to go back to St. John's.
Sorry, what was the question again?
Were you there when I was wheeled out to helicopter to go back to St. John's?
I honestly can't remember.
Yeah, I don't think so. I remember you coming out of ICU and moved into I guess a regular room.
Okay.
I remember you talking the first time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What did I say?
Because I can't remember what you said, but I'd come in to see you, and you had you were able to squeeze your hand, and I think they taught you one squeeze is no and two squeezes is yes or something like that, and we try to have a conversation with you that way, just because I think the medical staff was like, anything you can do to kind of help Nick remember things about life, right? Like I think that was kind of how those conversations were going. So I would ask you questions about your riding across the country and stuff like that.
All right. Yeah.
But I remember one day coming in and you were able to vocalize a bit, right? You had a few words that you were saying and stuff like that. And that was kind of the day that I think like a collective sigh of relief were coming out, where you were really past the he may or may not make it stage. And then your parents started talking about, okay, well, we need to get back to St. John's and get back to life, and they made the plans to fly you back.
Yeah.
So I don't think I was there the day that they moved you though.
John, that he was in a medical induced coma? That's what was it about 2 weeks that he was in a coma?
At least 2 weeks. I want to say it was probably 3 when all said and done, but yeah. And definitely like medically induced, like they were keeping you in a coma.
Yeah. Then I don't know when they decide that, and you do into coma, like when they decide, okay, is it like you're too far gone, we got to put you in a coma, or is it just that it makes sense now to be stabilized people? Do you know, Lauren?
As far as why they moved you?
Why in medical induced coma? Why is encouraged at that point? Is that because someone's too far gone that this coma makes sense, or is it because stability? Is it just for stability? Do you know?
I mean, I would be kind of talking to my rear end. I have my best guesses, but I don't work in that area, but I would think that if they had opened your skull, they would have sutured a part of it into your abdomen.
Yeah.
So some of that they would have done it to keep you, calm. I don't know what kind of tubes and wires. You would have been on a ventilator, I'm assuming.
I had a feeding tube, did I? I had a feeding tube because I had a lot of the scar in the feeding tube, and I had a tracheotomy. You can see.
Yeah. So they keep you, at least back then. Now they get people up a little bit on their vents, but back then they would have kept you more sedated because of the vent. And then when they move you to a trach, they can wake you up. When you have a trach, you won't pull the tubes, so they can wake you up. But again, that's about the majority that I know about that.
And
I think I tried to pull the tubes out of my neck or stomach or something, didn't I, John? Around? No,
I don't remember any of that. I mean, your wrists, they had you tied down on the bed so that you couldn't move your arms very much when you were in the ICU. And I know that, one of the reasons why they kept you in that coma was because your brain was so swollen that it was impacting your heart rhythm and it was impacting your body temperature in a big way. Like you were in some kind of a bag that had like cold water running through it to regulate your temperature, because you're running really hot. So
there's a lot of brain swelling.
Yeah.
Did you guys say that the surgery was delayed? So was the swelling delayed, or did they catch it delayed, or is there a reason why they didn't open it sooner? Did you say you were put in the coma first and then they brought you into surgery later on?
I don't remember how the order went, if he went from emerge to surgery to ICU, or if he went from emerge to ICU and then into surgery. I just can't recall. But it would have
It was
been,
all that day, wasn't it?
yeah,
Okay.
it would have been fairly quickly.
And then there was just that hour waiting time of being out in the wilderness. That tends to be where the accidents happen, right? But then that tends to mean it's the longest access to care is when we're out in the middle of nowhere kind of thing. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I know as after that day, it's more or less just it's out of your hands, and more John Allen and also I'd say Don's not here, but pretend she is now. But after that day, it's kind of out of your hands. Obviously, not kind of, it's totally out of your hands. And I was the hospital, and the doctors, and my family at that point. But so I didn't have anything else to really clarify or to ask you about that day. But so Lauren, did you have any questions for them or even for me or whatever? I mean, it doesn't matter who you talk to at this point. Yes.
I think it's wonderful that they were able to, John used the word guilt, but then very quickly clarified not that he felt guilt about the accident itself. Like, I think it's really important for people who witness a traumatic event like that or had that sort of survivor's guilt kind of thing, that is really, they didn't do anything wrong. In fact, they implemented life-saving rescue techniques to keep you around. And so I think he said that really well, that you can have these emotions, but then being able to separate out your emotions and knowing which ones are appropriate, which ones not, because somebody could witness an accident like that and they could take a much different path with it because of a feeling like guilt. So I think that's wonderful that they're able to compartmentalize and they're able to talk about it, ride their bikes again. I think there's so many positives from such a hard story, if that makes sense, not taking away from Nick's experience at all. But I think that for the friends around him, it's so wonderful that they were able to live such a full life after seeing something like that.
Thank you. It's great. And I was going to say, because I know like my podcast is called Concussion Talk, because I wanted to talk about my brain injury, but also just brain injury in general. And there's more concussions than there are severe brain injuries. If I talk to severe brain injuries, it wouldn't reach as many people as need help as I am. I know I reached out to Lauren because Lauren has had her share of concussions. And I know one thing of the concussions of people like are, it's people I remember. I mean, for example, I'll kind of backtrack a lot here, but my mom was saying, like, when I told her about I wanted to do this type of podcast, this episode, she was surprised that I wanted to talk about it. People are surprised I want to talk about this, but it was such a severe injury that it's kind of, but bifurcated my life, as in like my life before and after. Kind of, it's very obvious. I obviously was so injured that I can't, and injured in a way that I couldn't do sports again. I couldn't do it the way I want to do it. I can do sports again, but I couldn't do them the way I want to do. But I was definitely so much different than I was before. That I had no problems talking about the past before my injury or at my injury, because just like a different second experience that just happened. It's actually more emotional for John Allen and John to talk about it, because they were there. If you remember, they were there. But I don't remember the accident at all, obviously, and which is a good thing. But it's just as in, like, I can just talk about it as something that happened in the past, a historical event, and doesn't really affect my thoughts. I don't know if I need to work on that, or if that's just the way it is, the way it should be. But
I think it's very healthy, Nick. I think that's very healthy. I mean, listen, I'm not a psychologist, but I work with people all day who struggle with that, who I used to be, who I am, and how much that hangs people up in their recovery. And people have to work through that emotion at their own, this is a long time ago now for you, but people have to work through that emotion on their own. But there are people who get trapped in that, this is what my life used to be, and they simply can't move forward. And you've been able to do so much with your book and your podcast and creating this whole life for yourself without having to dwell too much on the what coulda, shoulda. And I think I think you should be commended for that. I think that's wonderful.
Thanks. And like I was saying, like the concussions, like I know people that concussions like not take away from their experiences, but concussions are just so close to your like the always call it the invisible injury, brain injury is because it's just if I doesn't physically affect that be more invisible than it is, but for concussions, just usually not as detrimentally physically for as severely for as long, and so you can see your old life and see that people treat you the same way, and you can see that okay, that's brain deal, that's what should happen because of my old life, whereas where I was so severely injured that my life was just didn't happen before it happened, but it's just like obviously not, and no one treated me the same as before because the injury is so severe, and so that kind of in a way made it easier. But also, I should also note that it has been 18 years. It's not like it just all of a sudden like I woke up and on August whatever 20 some odd or it was because August 20 is August 1st, and so I didn't wake up at home and all that happy think that okay that's over with now, but like, it took me a long time, like at least 10 years at least to, and I'm still on it probably probably not even over in the best sense, but I am, but I feel like I am, but anyway, yeah, it's been such a long time that it's not like it's people think, oh, just when I hear I'm talking to cousins now, it's very recent that I hear they're talking about their injuries and how long it's taken them like 5 years, and the me thought is like, wow, that's a long time. But then I think of my own life, and like, well, that's not really long time. But I wish 5 years, but like again, I don't because it's 5 years is 5 years. That's the last time. That's that's obviously that's very important to everybody. So I know I just want to make a speech to him, but I didn't make it very well. But yeah, and I said only if that ends it, but Alan and John. Sorry, John. I got you, Don, who's not here, but
Or Dawn.
or Don.
Yeah.
Well, poor Don.
She's never gonna live it down.
I know.
Dawn. She's gonna live forever, and but Dawn's not here.
I'm gonna tag her first all in the. I wrote a little spiel on my blog saying a little information about this podcast before this, and said I talk down to Alan, Don, and John because I want to do it alphabetically. So so Don is like the first name. Well, Alan is the first name, but Alan's not on Instagram or on Facebook. On Facebook, but anyway, so yeah, so she's tagged there, but she's not on this. But I'll still tag her. She'll we'll talk.
We should call this episode "Don's Not Here."
Yeah, exactly. yeah, exactly.
Dawn's here no more.
Yeah, right.
Hey, before we drop off, Nick, I wanted to ask you: do you remember going back to the scene of the accident?
I remember when I came back in like 05 or back to UVic. And
yeah, you came back to finish your MPA degree.
Yeah.
And before you left town, you asked to go out there, and I think
you told me out there. Remember you told me out there, and I vaguely remember the.
I don't remember going out there with you guys. I mean, maybe I was there, but I don't recall that. I remember being amazed that you came back 2 years after and finished off your degree. Yeah. I thought that was just so amazing.
Yeah, no, and I remember that. I remember that day. I remember I was early on. You showed me the bike. I showed a bike, but then I said, "Can you take me to?" Yeah, so it was late. It was late. It was like maybe my last days there.
It was right before you left town after you were done. I think you were going to Ottawa from Victoria. You'd gotten a job out in Ottawa or something like that.
Well, I did like a year later, but after I was going to go to Ottawa after my injury. Before I know 3 years going to go to Ottawa. I had a job in Ottawa, a co-op job in Ottawa, at the auditor general's office there in 03. But again, like that obviously was not happening because I was in a coma. But but then I got a job at Ottawa a year later, but that was 06 when I left Victoria, and like I just started a job in 07 in Ottawa. But I was going back, I was going to Toronto and then to visit friends and for a few days. But I think we went to like the PJ Billington's. Is that sound right? Restaurant. Just probably.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, that wouldn't have been with me in Victoria.
no.
I remember taking you back to the
Yes.
scene of the incident and it just feeling probably surreal, like just to watch Nick look at the tree and
Yeah, see, to me, it felt like to you was obviously something because you take recognized, but for me, it was like, okay, this place is a new place. This is interesting. I was totally separate from it. It was like, but for you,
Yeah.
it's been a lot more different, a lot different.
I think for you it was like the first time you'd been there, right? Because you
Yeah.
had no memory of the day.
No,
And that might have been the first time that you'd ridden that route with us too. I can't remember how many times we did that bike ride together. Definitely Alan and I and Don and I had done that ride lots, but that might have been the first time that you were ever on that route. But yeah, it felt like the closing of the chapter when we went back there. Like
yeah,
you were able to see it and I mean you'd really moved on a lot in the between those years that had happened and when you finished your degree.
yeah, great videos and learn doing. But I had great doggers and great videos and great the rehab specialist and obviously great friends. So I think, but in Victoria, Ontario, and St. John's, and yeah. So I think that was actually a very good place to end this podcast now because I don't know how long we've spoken for, but been for a while. And so just want to, Alan, do you have anything else to say? Okay. I just wanted to just thank you both and thank you, Dawn, who's not here, but she'll know about this podcast because we won't let her forget. But yeah, but thank you all so much thank you, John and Don, and stay on the call because I'll just stop recording now. But I'll still just want to say thanks and say goodbye to you and you too, Lauren. So I'll just stop the call now. But thank you and thanks everyone for listening. As always, music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound, www.bensound.com.